a Persian poet from back in the ancient times in the 13th century. His name was Jalaluddin Rumi. And Rumi has this observation. It's been very important and very powerful to me. He said, "The morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep." Let me say it again. The morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. I'd like to take a poll. Just by a show of hands, I'd like to ask how many people in this room, and there's about 3,000 of us here tonight, I'd like to ask you, how many of you awaken at one time or another between the hours of 3 and 4 a.m.? Let me just see by a show of hands. And if you look around, you see that this is a universal experience. Now, what do you think that is? If everybody, almost everybody, awakens at some time between 3 and 4. Now, for some of us, we just interpret that as, all right, this is my age, I'll just run into the bathroom and I'll be right back. And you may make that visit several times a night, I don't know. But there's more to that. And I'd like you to, now of all of those people who raised their hand at this idea that you awaken sometime between 3 and 4 a.m., how many of you awaken at exactly the same time? Exactly the same time, with a little digital clock next to you. What is your time? 3:18. What is your time? 2:20. What is yours? 4:50. So like there's a, and this happens repeatedly over and over again. My time is 3:13. I awaken at 3:13 night after night after night. I look over, I've got this little clock. It's not an alarm clock, it's just a little digital clock. I just look over and it's 3:13 again and again and again. So what I had trained myself to do in the writing of this book, in the inspiration book, is to put my feet on the floor and say to myself, all right, you are going to awaken because here's what Rumi said, the morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Do you realize that between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of the night, this is the time when you're closest to your source? This is the time when it's the quietest. It is the time when it's the most peaceful, when there are the least distractions. In A Course in Miracles it says the memory of God comes to the quiet mind. It cannot come where there is conflict. A mind at war with itself remembers not eternal gentleness. Eternal gentleness. That's what you came from. It beckons you back to be awake. It's the most creative time in your life. Try it. Take that moment that you are being called by your source and awaken, and force yourself to shake the cobwebs out. And if you can't, then put your feet on the floor and say, look, if I have to go back to sleep, I'm going to sleep with my feet on the floor. And after a while, that gets very uncomfortable, and you'll get yourself up. Now, when I do that and I get up, that is the most glorious time to be out there. And I go out onto the lanai, and I get this sense of this powerful feeling of inspiration. It's overwhelming to me. And I walk by my writing table, and it pulls me. It's pulling me towards it. It's almost beckoning me and saying, please, please come to me. I want you to, and I sit there sometimes, and I literally wonder, where is this coming from? The words, they just flow, and I sit there and I write by hand. And as I'm writing and allowing this to flow through my heart and onto the pages, I just think to myself, I wonder what's going to come next. I wonder when it's going to come next. It's almost as if God is saying, this is why you're here. And I can't get you any other time because it's just so busy, and there's horns bonk, and there's so many distractions. But here's a time when you can just be with me. Just be in spirit. Just be inspired. Inspirado. Be in this space with me. And I will then allow what creative juices that you have forgotten about because you edged me out for so much a part of your life. And here it is. And you'll find yourself getting the right ideas. examining things that you never thought of before. Writing, some of you, I know you do it in your sleep many times, you'll write a poem and it'll be so phenomenal, and then you'll say, well, I'll remember that tomorrow. And then you get up and you can't get any of it. The morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Use those hours. And forget about the idea that, let's see now, I went to bed at 11, and if I get up at 3, that means 4 hours, so I'm going to be 4 hours deficient all day long. I'm not going to be... Forget that. You've got an eternity to sleep. An eternity to sleep. And when you learn to meditate and get quiet and get peaceful, you can always, in 20 minutes time of meditation, any time during the day, get the equivalent of a full night's sleep. Don't go back to sleep. There is a place and a possibility that miraculous things can happen, but you have to, in order to banish the doubt, in order to heal this energy body that I'm speaking about here, you have to be in such a position that you're not asking. You're not coming from a ordinary place asking someone extraordinary to do something for you. That's sort of what we've learned in our religious model. That God is outside of us, something like a cosmic bellboy. That if we just sort of ask it to do something for us and we behave and we pay a certain amount of money and we go to the right temples and we do the right things, that this external being will then provide us with favors, and that this God has the ability to heal, but it withholds it depending upon what mood it's in and so on. And that's a very different concept that I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a concept of God that says that we are all pieces of God. Like T.S. Eliot said, we shall not cease from exploring. And at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated and to know it for the first time, to know it. You don't have to die to do this. You can know it here. You can know it now. You can say to yourself, as the I Am discourses say over and over and over again, the I Am is the divine work of God. And you are capable of saying I am. And you don't want to add anything after I am that isn't consistent or harmonious or in rapport with God. That is the all-creating knowing, the all-knowingness. We all know everything. There's a higher self within each and every one of us. There's a highest self which is omniscient and omnipotent, all-powerful, and everywhere at once. And the Creator, according to Mikhail Ivanov, a great teacher of the White Brotherhood, that is white light, not white skin, okay? I could get nervous when I say that. But it's and this teaching of the initiatic sciences, which I've been studying for the last couple of years in depth, reading and studying and meditating on a regular basis, that God places within each and every one of us a spark of Himself. Most organized religion has taught that we know and we're the conduit, we're the ones that can give you access to God. You have to do it through us, through our organization, through all of the kinds of teachings that we have. And I'm suggesting that you don't need that at all. So it's an awareness that there's something, something so powerful that we're capable of, and that there is a highest self within each and every one of us. And this highest self is, religion doesn't teach it. Religion has not taught that because it's been so much about power. So, when we're talking about the conflicts that are going on here in the Balkans, where we are right now, off to Medjugorje tomorrow, so much of it is about religion. So much of it is about, Christians and Muslims and fighting and all of this kind of thing over these ideas. And I'm suggesting to you that Jesus was saying, you are God's. And you have to be able to say, I am. And anything that you want to place your attention on, if you want to overcome an addiction, if you want to lose the weight that you've had for as long, if you've been overweight for most of your life, if you want to attract prosperity and wellness into your life, if these are something that you really want for yourself, truly, if you want it for yourself, you have to declare it. And it's not about asking. It's about commanding.
Here's what Einstein said about that. He said, your imagination is more important than knowledge. For knowledge is limited to all that we know and understand, while your imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. It's like the power of our imagination is unlimited, and I've often given the example of that you cannot create something for yourself in your life if you don't have an expectation for it. And your expectation for what it is that you'd like to create for yourself in your life is strictly, in your imagination. And if you're living in a place where you are experiencing something like poverty, and you see around you all the reasons why that this is taking place, and you're constantly thinking about, that the economy is down, or I didn't get the breaks, or the money has just run out, and I'm not going to be able to replace it. You've got to be able to keep, understand what Rilke is saying there, that they'll be lost to you because they're banished by your failure to imagine them. And this power of your imagination, what you place into your imagination, is probably the most important quality that you can have. The power of your imagination affects how it is that you relate to the world, and what it is that you allow into your world, and what it is that you expel from your world before it even gets there.
You have within you a great gift. It's the most powerful gift you've ever been given. It's the gift of your imagination. And in your imagination, in your thoughts, nothing else, go to the place within you where you begin to perceive and see what it is that you would like to be, whether it's the right weight you would like to be, or addiction-free, or to have the job that you want, or to be in the kind of relationship that you would like to have. Just in your imagination and no place else, just go there and create for yourself, and you can't come up with an excuse for it because you're just doing this in your mind. So that's the first thing you do. And then, when you get this firmly entrenched in your mind, you then go to the feeling that accompanies that thought. You're not thinking about what you would like to have, you're thinking from the end. You're thinking there. In your imagination only, you are there. And now, how does that feel? What do you feel? I was at the mall just recently with Sky and Serena, two of my daughters. And this young man walked up to me, young man, 39 years old. And he had a major speech impediment. He was a stutterer. He could barely get words out. But he recognized me, he saw me, and it took all of his courage to come up to me. His name was Vincent. And finally he couldn't get the words out and so on. And I said, well, what would you like? He started immediately talking about his speech impediment. And I said, how would you, in your imagination, what I'd like you to do right here, right now, is I'd like you to see yourself as free of that speech impediment. Just free of it. It's gone. It's completely gone. He said, okay, I can do that. And he said, I said, now, how does it feel? He said, it feels great. See, the thought is what you create in your imagination, but the feeling is where you experience it, in the body. I feel great. I said, what I want you to do is every single time you think about that speech impediment, I want you to go to that feeling. I feel great. Every time you think about losing the weight, I want you to go to the place in your imagination in which you are what it is that you want to weigh, looking the way you want to look. Every time you have a thought about you don't have enough money, I want you to go to the place in your imagination where you are free of that fear of not having enough prosperity or abundance. Just go to that place and then ask yourself, how does it feel? It feels joyful. It feels content.
You move now from the world of the intellect, because understanding something intellectually is very different than understanding something spiritually. To understand something spiritually, you must experience it. And in order to experience it, you have to experience it in your imagination as an I am, but you must be able to feel it. Our feelings are the things that take place in our body. It says, Neville says, and I have this on next to my bed where I live in Maui, make your future dream a present fact by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So whatever it is that you would like to experience in your life, remember, your imagination is yours. Everything that now exists was once imagined. Therefore, everything that is going to exist must first be imagined. Okay? Henry David Thoreau had probably the greatest definition of success that I have ever heard. He said, if you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. It will chase after you if you can place into your imagination what it is that you would like to attract and begin to feel it. Listen to Neville. This is one of my most favorite quotes from The Power of Awareness. That which you feel yourself to be, you are. And you are given that which you are. So assume the feeling that would be yours were you already in possession of your wish. And your wish must be realized. So live in the feeling of being the one you want to be, and that you shall be. Every feeling makes a subconscious impression. And unless it is counteracted by a more powerful feeling of an opposite nature, it must be expressed. Your feelings are different from your thoughts. Your feelings are what you experience in your body. The dominant of two feelings is the one expressed. I am healthy is a stronger feeling than I will be healthy. I am healthy says I feel healthy, and I feel healthy. I feel great. I don't determine if I am well on the basis of what it says on a piece of paper or on the basis of what somebody else out there tells me. I live my life feeling within my body that I am strong, I am capable, I am able. And that is not just something that I say. It's not just an affirmation. An affirmation is an intellectual exercise. This is a spiritual knowing within that I am well, I am content, I am prosperous. But the words that Neville used there are the subconscious. Every feeling that you have makes a subconscious impression upon your body and upon your awareness. Now, you need to understand the subconscious mind of yours. Your subconscious mind rules your life. 96 to 97% of everything that you do is done as a result of your subconscious mind. And when your subconscious mind gets programmed, it goes ahead and responds to whatever it is your conscious mind has placed into it. And to feel it, not just to think it, but to feel it. Neville's law of assumption says this: if this assumption about what you would like to become is persisted in until it becomes your dominant feeling, the attainment of your ideal is absolutely inevitable. You must first assume the feeling of a wish fulfilled in all aspects of your life. So you have to say to yourself, what does it feel like to be prosperous? What does it feel like to be content? What does it feel like to be well? And I had to remind myself of that when I had this leukemia diagnosis. I had to remind myself, I was down about 30 minutes until I realized that virtually everything that shows up in my life has been a blessing. Virtually everything. All of the struggles, whether it's in, addictions, or whether it's in living in foster homes and being abandoned, whether it's my wife and I separating and the pain of that, whatever it might be. A dear friend of mine was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She passed away a few years back, and she was the one who wrote so much about death and dying. She had a wonderful and important message for us. She said, if you shield the mountain from the windstorms, you'll never see the beauty of the carvings. And the beauty of the carvings comes from being able to be in a state of gratitude for the storms that show up in our life just as much as the things that we would like to have show up in our life. You have to start retraining your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind, it responds to what it is that you suggest to it. Now, the intriguing thing about your subconscious mind, your habitual mind, is that it can't make a distinction between what it is that you are feeling as a result of what you have placed into your imagination and assumed the feeling of it, and what you are experiencing every day in your life. If you go around feeling unhappy, depressed, miserable, sad, whatever, your subconscious mind says, oh, so this is what it is that you would like to attract into your life. And the universal subconscious mind, to which we were all connected, that we call the creative source of the universe, the divine mind, God, the Tao, whatever you might want it to be, it will begin to offer you experiences that match up to what it is that you are feeling, so your body responds to what it is you place into your subconscious mind. You have to retrain it.
Let me share something with you from Power versus Force. Pain exists to promote evolution. Its cumulative effect finally forces us in a new direction. Though the mechanism may be very, very slow, how many times is it necessary, he asks, to hit bottom before a lesson is learned? Perhaps thousands, which may account for the sheer quantity of human suffering so vast as to be incomprehensible. But slowly, ever so slowly, by inches, does civilization advance. By inches. And as many times as I was interviewed on TV after the events of the 11th of September 2001, when people ask me about my view of humanity and do these kinds of things suggest that we are moving backward or forward, my suggestion is always that we are moving forward, and that these kinds of events bring out in us the very best that humanity has to offer, as difficult as it is for us to see in the moments. And I think back to not too long ago, in 1958, I was in the United States Navy. I was in a radio school there in a place called Havre de Grace, Maryland, Bainbridge, Maryland. And my best friend in life at that time, who was in the boot camp with me, was named Rayford Secundus Dudley. And he was a black young man from Chicago. And it was 1958. And we walked into a diner in Havre de Grace, Maryland at 1 o'clock in the morning. And we were both in the uniform of the United States Navy. And they wouldn't serve us because he was black. In 1958. And I walked out of there in shock that a man who was serving his country and in the service could be denied to have an omelet with me. And we both, of course, walked out. And I think back to 1958, and now it's 40 or so, 45, hard to imagine, years have passed. And that kind of thing is impossible in this country. today. Just doesn't happen. Inch by inch, slowly. And there are many, many more examples. One of my favorite is getting on an airplane out in Wyoming, and a woman's voice came over the PA and announced that she was the pilot and that she was flying us to our destination. And a man was walking through the aisles asking if we wanted coffee, tea, or milk. And I thought, now there's an example of transformation. And when I graduated from high school, the number of women that were admitted to law school and medical school was somewhere around 1 or 2%. And now it's somewhere around 50%. Slowly, inch by inch. And when those planes flew into the World Trade Center, it brought out the very best in millions of us, not only in America, but around the world. And I believe what Hawkins is speaking about, that we have to treasure our divinity by remembering that our basic inherent goodness is what is in there. He says, that which is injurious loses its capacity to harm when it is brought into the light. And now nothing need remain hidden. Every thought, every action, every decision or feeling creates an eddy in the interlocking, interbalancing, ever-moving energy fields of life, leaving a permanent record for all of mankind and all time. And he says this even further, in this interconnected universe, now we're talking about the highest level of unity consciousness, God consciousness, divinity consciousness. In this interconnected universe, every improvement we make in our private world improves the world at large for everyone else. We all float on the collective level of consciousness of mankind so that any increment we add comes back to us. And simple kindness to oneself and all that lives is the most powerful, transformational force of all. It produces no backlash, has no downside, and never leads to loss or despair. Every thought is in a permanent record of all of mankind. And ever so slowly, we move.
And a word needs to be said here about failure. You have to understand that you don't fail at anything in life. You can't fail at anything. That's really an important notion. Everything you do produces a result. If you take a golf ball and put it up on a golf tee and you swing at it and it dribbles off to the side, you haven't failed. You've produced a result. The question isn't whether you're willing to fail or not, or what you do, or whether or not you're a failure. The question is, what do you do with the results that you produce in your life? If you weigh 300 pounds and you want to weigh 125 pounds, you haven't failed. You've produced massive results. The question is, what do you do with the results that you have produced? Do you tell yourself that, oh, I'm no good at this, and you put a label on yourself and stay away from the unknown? Or do you make an effort to learn from what you've produced? I'll give you an example on the tennis court. My doubles partner made a bad shot. And he screamed something out, called himself a name. He said, you jerk, you dummy. He was talking to himself. And I stopped and I said, Lenny, I really don't appreciate it when somebody calls my partner a jerk and a dummy. I said, who was that? Who was doing that? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, whoever it is that's calling my partner a jerk and a dummy, I'd like you to get in touch with him and remind him that he's a beautiful guy and he just didn't hit the shot the way he wanted to. I'd like you to tell that person that. It's like a reminder that when you call yourself a name, you got two people going here. You got the person who's the recipient, the jerk, and you got the person doing the calling. Well, you want to get those two in balance. You want to get those two in harmony. You want that person, whoever that is saying, you jerk, to say, you're allowed to make an error in tennis. You have to do it. Nobody goes through a whole match without making errors. And that it's okay, and that you forgive yourself, and you're kind to yourself. And then the recipient of that is in balance. So that those two people, quote, or those two parts of you are in harmony. Because if the part of you that's calling you a jerk, if the recipient of that begins to believe that,
then you start acting on what you hear and what you believe. And pretty soon, everything that you say to yourself, if you call yourself a jerk enough, you're going to think that you're a jerk. And that's one of the problems with self-esteem. It's people who have really talked to themselves in such a way that the self and the I, which we've separated, they become the same. And so the person who's doing the calling believes that they're a jerk, and the person who's the recipient believes it. And if they had an observer there, if that I who was doing that instead was saying, you're pretty terrific. You make some mistakes. All of us do, but that doesn't mean that you're bad and that you're not any good. And you get those two in harmony so that you are never calling yourself anything but what you would like to be. And the more you do that, the more that you'll be in harmony.
And you don't learn these things through instruction. You don't learn these things by somebody else telling them to you. You've got to learn them through the direct experience of it. It's almost as if God said, all right, here you are. You showed up. And you want to teach people about self-reliance? Get your little ass into an orphanage for 10 years. And learn how to do that. Learn how to rely on yourself. Become inner-directed. Become self-directed. And don't complain about it, and don't whine about it, and find something beautiful in it. And that's what we do when we're children. We don't wake up when we're an orphan and when we're a child every day and say, oh my God, I'm an orphan again today. It's Wednesday. I was one yesterday, now it's tomorrow. When is this going to end? You don't do that. You wake up and you deal with what you have to deal with. And you get on with your life. And now you can look back at your life, and most people look back at the experiences of their life and say to themselves, if only it would have been different. If only. And there is no if only in there. It was all in order. Life gives exams. Bernie and I and Joan had dinner together last night, and we were talking about the variables that we see in highly successful people. And I said, finally, there's a thread that runs through all of this. There are people who go through life and have really tough experiences. Most of the time when you read about people who abuse their children, and you interview them, you find that, what? They were abused as children. I mean, it's something that you all know. You can shout it out. And then there are some who were abused as a child. And I was one, not viciously, but on some occasion. And while this is happening, you make an inner vow that this isn't going to be anything I'm going to partake in. And I would never do this to one of them. Like, you learn from it, or you repeat it. You take the things that come along, and when you get to that spiritual place in your life, you begin to see that these things all have great lessons in them. And instead of saying to yourself, why is this happening to me? Isn't this awful? Poor me. You begin to say, what do I have to learn from this? Because you have banished the doubt that this is some sort of freak accident that you're in, and you begin to see that this is an intelligent system that you're all a part of.
One of the big victim traps that so many people find themselves in is being seduced by what is over. I always tell people what is over, and you can't change it, you can't should have done it, you can't would have done it, you can't could have done it. You've got to stop all that shoulding on yourself, if you will. And what you want to do here is look at how you get to be victimized by things that have already happened. Everything that you did in your life up until this moment is over. It's done. It had to happen in order for you to get to the next level. Accept that. Don't allow yourself to be victimized by things that you can't change, things that are over. Your parents were the parents that they were. Your parents did what they knew how to do, given the conditions of their life. They didn't do it good, they didn't do it bad, they weren't right, they weren't wrong. They just were who they were. And they did what they knew how to do. And if what they knew how to do didn't fit in with what you think they should have been doing, then learn from it, grow from it. Don't be full of anger and hatred for them. That's the biggest victim trap you can get into, being mad at somebody for what they did 25 years ago. And besides, they're a different person today anyway, and probably wouldn't do it that way at all. So what you want to do is look at everything that you find yourself upset about or manipulated by or controlled by, and change all of that. Shift it around. Shift it around to a new kind of consciousness. And that consciousness is, I can't change what's over. So all of the things that you did in your past, and all of the shoulds that people are imposing on you, are things that you're going to have to watch out for. One of the big victim traps people are going to use is they're going to tell you what you should have done. If only you would have listened to me. If only you would have done it before. If only you would have done things the way I said. And when anybody ever does that, that sends off a signal in me. There's a flag that goes up, and I put that, it's a mental flag, and it goes right up into my head. And that flag, it says, I should have done it that way. I already did it. That's already over. And if somebody starts telling me over and over if only you would have listened to me, I will even ask them questions like, how can I have listened to you now? How can I do that? Explain how I can do that. And usually that just stops them, because they see that there's no way that you can have listened to them when that time is over. If only you wouldn't have moved to Chicago in 1957. If only you wouldn't have done that, you wouldn't be having all these troubles now. How could you not have moved in 1957 when it's in 1991? How can you do that? It's not possible. So you have to be watchful for that and look out for the victimizers who will resort to looking at what is over and try to keep you their victim by constantly putting you back there.
Your life is like a boat, and it's heading up the river at, say, 40 knots, all right? And as it's going, you are somehow able to metaphorically stand on the stern, the back of the boat, and look down into the water. Now there goes your life in this direction, and you're standing here and you're looking down into the water, and you ask yourself these three questions. The first question, what is the wake? What is it? What is this thing that you see? And the answer, the wake is the trail that is left behind. That's what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. It's the trail that is left behind. Second question to ask yourself in this little metaphor, what's driving the boat? What's making this thing go in this direction? The answer, the present moment energy that's being generated by the engine, and nothing more. That's the only thing that's making the boat go in this direction. And in this little scene, this means it's the present moment thoughts that I have and how I am using them that is making my life go in this direction, and nothing more. Because the third question is the most important and powerful question. And ever since I heard it, I've always thought about this whenever I have a tendency to look back here and blame something. Is it possible for the wake to drive the boat? That is, can a trail that is left behind make a boat go in this direction? And of course the answer to that is no. It can't. It's just a trail that is left behind. And in that trail, there are an enormous number of things, and every one of us has a wake. And we have a whole lot of stuff in it. And one of the problems that we have is that we have a tendency to look at the wake and all of the stuff that's in it to explain why it is my life isn't working the way I would like it to work. So that you can take a look at the experiences of your life. I look at the experiences of my life. In the experiences of my life, I spent some years in a series of foster homes. People have said to me, oh, living in a foster home, that must have been terrible. I said, no, it wasn't terrible at all. When you're 6 years old, you don't wake up every day and say, oh my God, I'm living in a foster home. Isn't this awful? Poor me. How come me and nobody else? You don't do that. You don't do that till you're 40. And when you're 40 and your life isn't working and you're bankrupt and you're a drug addict and your relationships are all falling apart and your family's leaving you, and you say, why is this happening to you? You say, what do you expect from me? I had to live in a foster home. My mother liked my sister better. We were too this, we were too... And so it's like we take a look at all of these things in our wake. And I'm not saying here that you shouldn't be in touch with your past and all of the things that are back there, but to use it as excuses for why you can't get where you'd like to get today is something that if you do that, you will never get to this place that I'm talking about in this program, which is this place that I call higher awareness, way beyond ordinary human awareness.
You have within you the power to create a series of ideas for yourself that will erase obstacles to your highest calling. When you imagine that you're free of any need to use excuses, you'll ultimately act on what you're imagining. So practice the process of envisioning precisely what your life would look like and feel like if it were impossible to enlist your excuse patterns. A good way to begin is by getting accustomed to visualizing exactly who you are as if you've already arrived. Seeing who you want to be as already here. Our poet friend, Mr. Blake, is saying that we imagined these self-limiting ideas before they became facts in our lives. Memetics, genetics, early childhood reinforcements, cultural conditioning, and years of thinking limiting thoughts join forces to become the excuses that have come to feel like reality. If William Blake's observation is true for you, its corollary applies as well. In other words, if you make the excuses begone shift and hold fast to its ideas, then you prove to yourself just how powerful your imagination is. This is why I included the words already here concerning the way you want to see yourself. For all intents and purposes, what you actively imagine is authentically and undeniably already here. So you can absolutely change from self-defeating excuses to self-enhancing actions. Once your new thinking habits are truly in place, it's the same as saying that you're already actualizing what you want. When I was in my early 20s, I used the imagination practice on the excuse, I'm too tired. I'd heard this so frequently that it finally became a mind virus I mimicked and employed regularly. It was a convenient but debilitating excuse because thinking and talking about how tired I was made me more fatigued than I actually was. The more I said the words, I'm tired, the more my energy seemed to be depleted, even when there was no physical reasons behind this. One morning, after listening to a friend tell me that he was too exhausted to carry out a planned weekend retreat, I decided to end my use of this excuse permanently. I pledged to never again tell others or myself how tired I was, and I began imagining myself in possession of unlimited energy. I didn't change my sleep habits or take energy supplements or change my lifestyle. All I did was imagine myself as a high-energy person. I was able to change the way I viewed myself in relationship to fatigue and started to see myself as a never-tired person. This all started with a new thought, which was placed first in my imagination, and to this day, some 40 years later, I've steadfastly refused to even think I'm tired. One of Ralph Waldo Emerson's essays includes a line that has always made an impact on me. Imagination, he said, is a very high sort of seeing. To me, this is seeing with a capital S. Seeing myself with boundless energy all those years ago allowed me to eliminate the obstacles of fatigue and energy depletion, and I created a new me in those imaginative moments. It will be difficult, and it will take a long time. These two similar excuses are frequently substituted for action. Now, imagine that you're incapable of creating these thoughts. In the same way that you can't imagine the mental activity of a jellyfish without ears or eyes that lives miles below the ocean surface, neither can you conceive of a task as being difficult or taking a long time. So if it were absolutely impossible for you to think this way, what would your life be like? Whatever it is that you'd like to accomplish, be it becoming an artist, creating your own musical composition, starting a new business, repairing your relationship with your parents or your spouse or anyone else, building a new home, getting into physical shape, anything at all, how would your world change if you couldn't even conceive of the idea that it would be difficult or take a long time? Without these excuses, what would life look like? It's a safe bet that you'd immediately initiate action propelling you in the direction of the fulfillment of your dreams. You'd talk to others who had similar kinds of dreams and then emerge successfully. You'd have a lot of energy, and you'd be actively engaged in the process of living the life you imagine. You'd attract synchronistic assistance and notice the right people, the right events, and the right circumstances persistently showing up. Why? Because you'd be acting just like the source of all creation does. You'd be aligned with a universe that says, yes, you can, and gives you the tools to prove it. You'd have no hesitation, no fear that something would be difficult or take too long. You'd happily do rather than explain or complain. And then, without these excuses, how would you feel? With these limitations completely out of the way, let me hazard a guess that you'd feel ecstatic and finally completely on purpose. A sense of freedom would delight you because avoidance of your true dharma would no longer exist. You'd feel enormous contentment rather than worrying about what you're avoiding or where you're going. There would be no focus on your destination since too long would no longer exist for you, and the now of the journey would provide the success and happiness you desire. You'd experience a great deal of bliss because you'd be guided by your creativity and initiative rather than fear of disappointment, and joy would rule your life. And without these excuses, what alternative thoughts would you have? Rather than focusing on what you can't do because it's difficult and takes a long time, you'd think like this. This is definitely something that I can and will create for myself. I know I can do anything I put my mind to. I anticipate that this is within my ability to readily accomplish it. I have no fear because I recognize that whatever guidance and assistance I require is available. I'm excited, thrilled, and elated about fulfilling this dream. I realize that the thoughts I have are meshed with enthusiasm and passion, and that nothing can stop me. In fact, I'm certain that whatever I need to actualize my dreams is already on its way. I contentedly watch for what the universe sends me. This gift of feeling good or feeling God within comes from serving and surrendering rather than asking and demanding. There's no room for blame in your life as long as you live with kindness. And excuses, regardless of their form, are all about blame. Blaming your past, blaming the economy, blaming your perceived personal flaws, blaming God, blaming your parents, blaming your children or your spouse, blaming your DNA. There's no shortage of circumstances, people, and events to blame, and there's no shortage of blame itself. When you shift to compassion, blame disappears. So no matter what you may want for yourself, discover how you can want it more for someone else, and then make that shift. In that contemplative moment, compassion will eradicate finger-pointing and trump excuse-making. And you'll begin to think like God thinks, serving, offering, giving, and loving freely. I've certainly found that when I remember to nurture kindness and courtesy, everything in my life seems to move towards more harmony and peace, to say nothing of how much better I feel when I'm giving rather than wanting. I heard the Dalai Lama speak on compassion some years back, and the essence of his message contained these 2 points. 1, that compassion is the single most important quality that humanity needs to learn. This is the way to find happiness and health and to feel successful. And 2, that war and violence would become extinct in 1 generation if, beginning at the age of 5, children were taught to meditate on compassion for an hour a week for the rest of their lives. Such is the power of a compassionate approach to life, which is truly thinking of others and living by the ancient golden rule. The very second you feel yourself retreating to excuses, repeat the mantra, "How may I serve?" Then act upon the answers you receive. You'll become aligned with universal mind, which is always giving, and the bonus is that you'll notice the universe asking you back, "How may I serve you?" As your compassion for others flows back to you, remember the truth I've written about many times in this book. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. So make compassion be what you are. Passion can only be experienced in this current moment. Now is where everything takes place. So your relationship to life is truly your relationship to the present moment. I love the definition of compassion offered by historian Arnold Toynbee. Quote, "Compassion is the desire that moves the individual self to widen the scope of its self-concern to embrace the whole of the universal self." Unquote. In any given moment of your life, when you embrace another beyond any concern for yourself, you are living compassion. You're also making it impossible to employ excuses. This is the time to widen your scope beyond self-concern and embrace a universal self that includes everyone, especially the person who is before you. Recognize that this moment is your power. Seize it and extend compassion without regard for yourself. And remember that your appointment with life is always in the present. Who are the most important people to work with? We often hear about and respond to the importance of offering assistance to others in drastic need in faraway places. As we try to work towards bringing about world peace, we join organizations dedicated to improving the lives of those who are most needy. Yet this doesn't answer this second question adequately. Whoever is in your immediate space is the most important person for you to work with, be it friend, family member, co-worker, or total stranger. Therefore, extend kindness to whomever you see before you. As Tolstoy reminds you, you can't know that you'll ever have dealings with anyone else. This is your moment, and the person to work with is right here. So the lesson is, don't look beyond the moment. Now is a perfect opportunity. Whoever is in your presence is the one who is available for your compassion. As the Vietnamese master Thich Nhat Hanh once observed, if you cannot make your own child happy, how do you expect to be able to make anyone else happy?
If all our friends in the peace movement or of service communities of any kind do not love and help one another, whom can we love and help? Are we working for other humans, or are we just working for the name of an organization? And 3, what is the most important thing to do at all times? Doing good is the equivalent of doing God. We're not here to conquer others, to wage war, to build towering temples to our deities, to become number one, to win anything or defeat anyone. No, we are here to be like God, or to be good, to serve, to reach out, to allow, not interfere, and be humble wherever we go. Give your ego a rest and live compassionately by being a decent human being.
The idea of just saying to myself, okay, I'm going to go 19 years and never have a drink again. That's just enough to send you off on a binge, isn't it? But you can do easy things, and you can get anywhere from here. You ever hear the line, a journey of 1,000 miles, what, begins with one step? That's right out of the Tao Te Ching. That was Lao Tzu. It's so simple. So when you think about balance in your life, think like this about being in balance. You have a dream, and your dream is to live a life that goes a certain way, that looks a certain way, that feels a certain way. You have a dream that you would like to be able to attract prosperity into your life, that you would like to live a prosperous life. My favorite example, I did it on the PBS show, of the lady sitting next to me from San Francisco who was flying back from Maui after having just done a wedding. And I said to her, what do you do? And she said, I'm a photographer. And I said, oh, how's it going? And she said, well, I'm never going to get rich at it. Now, this is just a thought. Is it true? I don't know if it's true. How can that be? How can you know if that's true, that you're never going to get rich? You don't know. So I said to her, well, would you like to get rich? This was what I always ask when people ask me. Well, she said, well, of course. She said, who wouldn't want to be rich? Everybody wants to be able to buy the things they want. We all want that. I said, so let me see if I understand. You would like to get rich. That's your dream. But what you offer up to that dream is that it'll never happen. That's out of balance. That's the kind of balance I'm speaking about. The kind of balance that you begin to realize that there's a misalignment, if you will, between what it is that you are thinking and what it is that you offer up in the way of habits to make those dreams a reality. I call it principles for creating habits to match your desire. Listen to this quote. It's from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, want, like what you want, is a growing giant whom the coat of have was never large enough to cover. Want is a growing giant whom the coat of have was never large enough to cover. That is, what you want and what you have are completely and totally out of balance. And Lao Tzu says this to you through me. When you put your attention on what you intend to create and you stay aligned with the way, with the source from which you came, it will show up. It has to. It has to. So that all of the deficiencies, all of the things that you want but are not able to manifest, have not manifested yet into your life, all of it is not because the universe isn't working with you. It will. It's because you are not a vibrational match, an energetic match to what it is that you would like to create. And all today is about is learning to change the way you look at your life and understanding that the life that you're living will change just by your changing your opinion about it. It's so
beautifully freeing to not be concerned any longer with whether or not what you would like to have is going to show up. If you would like to accomplish something, you must first expect it of yourself. And my question to you is, what do you expect of yourself? Do you expect to be able to perform miracles, to attract into your life the kind of prosperity that you are entitled to? Do you expect that you can manifest the kind of relationships that you would like? In order to be able to have these kinds of expectations for yourself, you have to make a dramatic change, a dramatic shift. You must change what's possible for you.